Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So, we're on the second lecture now in the marriage prep series, alhamdulillah. And so I hope we learned just a few things just since last time. One of the things that we mentioned that was to have good characteristics in the prospective spouse that you're looking for. We gave a list, and for those of you who missed it, we had the sisters write up a list of things that they absolutely wanted to see in a prospective spouse, and then another list of things that were absolutely no-no for them to see in a prospective spouse. We had the brothers do the same things, and I think one of the brothers wrote that down, and I don't know if any of the sisters wrote that down on their end. But what we're going to continue now, for the sake of time, and then we mentioned about where are permissible areas in which a person can possibly meet their prospective spouse. And pretty much Earth is your battlefield. I mean, anywhere you can possibly find a prospective spouse, as long as it's in a permissible way, then that's fine. Like we mentioned, one of the impermissible ways is actually flirting. And flirting, we mentioned it comes in different forms, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he specifically mentioned about flirting, and he even essentially told us it's almost like a soft form of zina, right? Because he said there's zina of the mouth, there's zina of the ears, there's zina of the eyes, and obviously that's not the zina that would be allotted a prescribed punishment for, but he's warning you that these things lead to eventually the major zina. Some of the psychologists call it the decaf adultery, right? And we mentioned flirting has to be an absolute, we have to hold that stance and say absolutely no, right? How do you get to know your spouse? We mentioned that would be the engagement period more so than anything. And also when that person comes and proposes. I want to, and this is the part that freaks us out a little bit in this generation day and age, is that when a guy comes to possibly ask a girl for marriage, it gets all serious and he's actually coming to the house and they think that this is the final stage. A lot of sisters are nervous because of this, because they think, well, I don't even know this guy. Perhaps their idea is that I'd rather have someone come and sit across from me on the dining room table or the living room, wherever, somebody who I know that person is. The issue is that culturally in Jersey, where we live, is that normally happens in non-Muslim relationships. You know that person before they come and meet the parents. But there is nothing scary or wrong about telling your dad or your mom, yeah, sure, I don't mind coming to meet this guy. Let him come. I'm free on the weekends, obviously, And then they come, and for you to just say no, it didn't work out. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing scary about that, right? There's just something works out and something doesn't. And after you get to sit with that person, we'll mention some of the questions that you should have in your mind to allow that conversation to be fruitful and be beneficial. Number one, the only reason I'm mentioning some of these questions is because some people get nervous at this time and they tend to forget what the important questions are to them. But naturally speaking, if you're sitting across from a person that you're possibly going to marry, most people say you know whether you're going to marry them or not just by looking at them in that first setting and how they carried themselves, how they walked over, how they said hi. Within that first minute, you already know whether it's a yes or no. And that goes for the overwhelming majority of interviews, by the way. That's not just a prospective spouse. That goes as far as job interviews. That goes as far as college interviews. The person interviewing you knows automatically within that first minute of talking to this person across from them whether they're going to be receiving a yes or a no. And then everything after that either supports that decision, or you must have done something really, brain-changing and game-changing to make this person switch the decision to the other way, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And after you're done with that conversation, then you start taking consultation, right? There is some homework that needs to be done before this person comes to your house. And that falls, and this is a more responsibility on these gentlemen here, and you have to understand that this is a role that Allah gave you, is that you must be doing research on a prospective groom for your sister or your daughter or whoever. Not necessarily you so much for your sister, but you should be looking around. This falls mostly on the father. So if somebody calls, says, hey, this guy Muhammad wants to come and ask for your daughter, what do you think? Are you guys available Friday? The father's got to ask some questions. Who is he, right? Where did he grow up? What's his background? What's he studying? Does he work? Does he not work? He has to do all of this information gathering, go around, ask about him, see what he can find, and make sure that this is a stand-up person. And then after all of that is done, they either welcome or say, honestly, it's just we're not ready for that particular step right now. Turn them away in a nice way. And then after, if the guy is stand up and he's coming, then the girl and the guy both have a decision to make after that meeting. How many times can you meet with one another? As many as possible. There's no limit. It's not like, I know some cultures say, okay, you meet her the first time, we have a follow-up meeting if it's a yes on both sides, just to make sure, and then we do get the big dad. Like, whoa, well, how about I visit a few times and, just make sure we're on the right path. Some people then do the complete opposite side of the spectrum. You meet, it's working out good, okay, wedding's in 6 months, and we do get the big dad the day before the wedding. Like none of this is from the religion, just so you're all aware, but if somebody followed that practice and they're comfortable with that, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So it's not like a time period that's final. And then before you finalize your decision, a person, not just for marriage, but for every important decision or even not important, every decision you want to make in your life, you could pray Salat Istikhara. And Salat Istikhara is a kind of supplication a person says after, quote unquote, after they give the salam, after praying 2 voluntary units of prayer. What does that mean? So that means after you pray, for example, the 2 rak'at of Salat al-Fajr, the morning prayer, you can actually make that intention for Salat Istikhara as well. Let's say you pray 2 rak'at of Salat al-Duha, or 2 rak'at of Maghrib. Any of these, it's 2 nafil, any extra 2 units of prayer. After you finish those 2 units, then what happens is you make this supplication. And as you know, the supplication, Allahumma nastakhiruka bil-ilmi, etc. You can Google that, Salat Istikhara. You make that supplication. You can read it off your phone. You can read it in any language you want, and that's absolutely fine. Okay? How many times do you pray Salat Istikhara? So the answer is, you could technically pray it as many times as you want, but from the sunnahs, you pray it 1 time. You just pray it 1 time, and that's it. Some people are expecting a dream, so they make sure to pray those 2 units before they sleep. And they're like, okay, that's it, nobody talk to me, going to sleep, clear my mind, let me see if this girl's coming to me in my dream. Well, I can tell you she probably will, right? Whether you prayed it or not, because you're dreaming about it, and you're still thinking about it. Because a lot of times, the things that we're thinking about a lot before we sleep tend to be something that you wind up dreaming about. But if you got a dream, great. If you didn't get a dream, who cares? One thing I will tell you, Islamically, never forget this, and if you're writing something down, you should write this, it's very important. Islamically, we do not believe in bad omens, period. That's bolded, cap locks, I don't know what emojis they put these days. We do not believe in bad omens. We can believe in good omens. There's a difference. So, you woke up, it's very cloudy and it's raining. You're like, oh no, I know where this is happening. It's really the devil in disguise. Or the same way, that guy's a liar, he's a cheapskate. I know he's great in talking and he really wooed me and I'm not gonna fall for it. It's a big storm outside. It's snowing 6 inches out there. And so you come back and the answer to that is no, right? We don't sit there and believe in bad omens. But let's say you're just feeling real good, you're feeling relaxed, you're that day, everything's kind of going with the flow. You're like, I like this, I'm feeling very confident, this seems like a good individual, pray istikhara, I don't have any scared feelings or anything, I'm gonna go forward with it. Absolutely fine, that's no problem with that, right? Absolutely fine. Let's see. What do you do, sisters, if you're menstruating and you wanted to pray Salat Istikhara? So the answer is that you either wait till you're done menstruating, you wait till that period's done, or you just make the dua without any of the prayer, according to all the scholars that I've studied with. So you either wait for that period to be over and you pray your 2 rak'at and then do it, or if it can't wait, you need to give an answer within a couple days or whatever, then just make the dua to Allah, which is absolutely allowed, and that should suffice in that. Okay? Then we also mentioned consultation. Consultation. They say that the one who prays istikhara will never regret anything they do, and the one who consults with people will never be disappointed. Right? So one thing I'll tell you is that a lot of times it's good to ask the people around you for their advice. The Prophet ﷺ said, if one of you has been consulted for advice, he said, then you have been entrusted. He said, and if you violate that trust, then Allah Azza wa Jal will hold you accountable for that on the day of judgment, right? So in this regard, backbiting is actually allowed by unanimous agreement. But that's if you were asked. Some of the scholars said, well, what if nobody asked you? What if nobody asked you? Here's the important rule of thumb. If you're 100% certain of this individual is just the worst person since whatever. So if you're sure that this is such a disastrous person, present day, then you can warn this person about them. But if you think that that was in their past, and there's a chance that they've changed, then you're not allowed to. So, for example, somebody came up to me and said, hey, do you know this kid that goes to your halaqah on Fridays? Yeah, I know him. So, I've been giving my halaqah, alhamdulillah, for a long time now, about 7 years. So when you come back, and I've seen people change, alhamdulillah. So if you ask me, did you see some dramatic changes? I could tell you yes. Some people hanging on Main Street, just, wasting their life, and then they come 180, and Allah guided them. They've made Umrah. An extra visit to Mecca, and they're praying. They're doing so many things. They're getting their degree. They're working really hard. So for me to sit there and tell them, this guy is number one, top notch, but his past was kind of ugly. Just don't ask about that. That's wrong. I'm actually violating an entrustment that Allah has given me. So it has to be something present day. What's the role of the parents? Number one, I want people to understand this very important. This is a beautiful statement that Sheikh Hatim, when we studied with him, he mentions very, dearly. The word for a husband in Arabic is zawj. The word for wife in Arabic is zawj. The word for family in Arabic is zawj. You say, wait, what? And the reason is because all of these entities are one. They're equal, right? It's that they have all these portions that are equal in this, they have that same relationship, this entity. And then so for two individuals to think that we're coming together and that's it, our parents like it, our parents don't like it, that's their problem. Our families can't get along, whatever. You guys have to work a little bit extra to make sure that everyone's getting along. And that's why we mentioned that a family who rejects another individual proposing for their daughter or son, because they're so contrasting backgrounds and they'll just never get along type deal, that's not racism. That's incompatibility. Right? So you want to also be fair, and you also want to be conscious and considerate of the people around you, because families are getting married here, right? And if you do find that there is a cultural disconnect, but not in this generation, it's more on the generation above you, then if you really want it to work out, if this person is the love of your life, right, that they all say, and then what you do is you got to work a little bit harder. You got to work so much harder, right? If you're used to, and I know it sounds silly, but maybe you start learning that other language to make their family feel a lot more comfortable. Things like that. You got to show that you're putting an effort in to show that you make it work. And I have seen many cross-cultural backgrounds have worked because both spouses were willing to put in a little bit of extra hard effort to make it to show that you have a question?
Oh, I don't want to interrupt you, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Can I come back to the bad omens for a second?
The bad omens, yeah.
So I've heard that before, that we don't believe in bad omens, but
Yeah.
nobody seems to clarify, if somebody is praying istikhara and it's not working out, where the line is between bad omens and just a difficulty in it. Like everyone believes that istikhara, if it's meant to be, it'll make it easier for you. So if it's not as easy of a process and people want to take that as a bad omen, where's the line between the two?
Right, so here's the interesting part. I want you guys to download the Salat Istikhara. If you don't have it, download it. And there's an app called My Dua. It's one that I just use. It's an app that has a lot of supplications in there. And if you actually read it in English, you're not asking Allah to make a decision for you, right? You're asking Allah to allow the decision you're making, beneficial for you if it's good for your deen and your akhirah, for your religion and your akhirah, and to move it away from you if it's not. At the end of the day, we still have to make that decision. And so if that's not an omen, right? That's like a person, they got a job, and then they're working for an employer, and this employer just keeps on giving them hell on earth, hell on earth, hell on earth. And then you know what? They have 5, 6 other opportunities out there. And then you come back and say, oh, I wonder if this is a bad omen. No, that's just the condition you're in, and you just got to change it. This is just not working out, right? So an omen is, and when we say omens, that's more like uncontrolled sign. So you walked in, and then, you know, some people, they believe like, oh God, man, I'll never forget when this happened. It was kind of disgusting, but I was walking to work when I was in high school, and a bird crapped on my head, right? So it was pretty, I'm telling you, straight up. So I came, and I was like, oh my God, this is really nasty. It's like white, and I'm like, yeah, it's super disgusting. And there was a particular girl who worked in the department store, and she was, I forget what religion, from Buddhist background or something. And I said, and she heard me saying to my friend this thing. She goes, oh my God, you're blessed for today. I said, what? She said, yeah, you're absolutely blessed. And I said, how does that make sense? She said, well, a bird does that. That is the best sign of luck on earth. For her, that's a good omen, but for us, that's absolutely haram as well, right? But see, things like that, that's what I mean by bad omen. You're driving and then you had a car accident. Oh, I've been driving for 6 years, I only got a car accident when I get engaged to this dude. I know what's happening here. That's it, right? First time my PBA card, most corrupt card on the face of this planet in New Jersey, oh, it didn't work this time? I've been using this card for 5 years and now I got engaged to this girl? Oh, I know what Allah's telling me, stop. Just clearly, stop. Oh, I know what that means. See, that's what I mean by bad omen. But you know what, by the way, you guys got to understand something. And especially how many of you are actually from Jersey? Just curious. Most of you, right? So you'll learn that Jersey people have very thick skin, unfortunately. It's good and it's bad. One thing I can tell you is that some people have good days and some people have bad days. And you have to understand that people have personalities, right? And you as an individual, you have to learn how to control them to make sure that your household is always in a good environment. Everybody slips every once in a while, we're human. But that doesn't mean that we take that as a bad omen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the engagement period itself. That's the khutbah comes from khutbah means the matter, and it means the engagement. In Arabic, technically speaking, shar'an, it means when a person proposes to a girl or to her wali, or to her wali, and a wali is the male that is responsible overseeing that household, typically her father. And it can be said explicitly, hey, you want to get married? Or it can be said implicitly, hinting. And we mentioned the hinting, right? That's technically the flirting, but you got to be careful, right? You got to be real careful there that you don't cross the line. It is absolutely forbidden to propose to a married person, a married woman, right? It's 100% forbidden to propose to a married woman. It is 100% forbidden for a girl to propose to a man who has 4 wives. I don't know where that's going to be anyway, but I'm just saying, because why? They're at their limit. And so I know a lot of times it's really disgusting, but sometimes in these movies and these cinematographies, they say like, I bet you, I could be a better husband than your husband, or these kind of hints or anything like that. Absolutely haram, 100% not allowed in our religion. You're not allowed to propose to a woman who is divorced still within her iddah period. Because she can still go back to that marriage. If it's after the iddah is over, then it's allowed. The proposal itself, there's no exact way to do it. This is by culture. So if somebody sits there, they bring family from both sides. I remember, man, I never seen this happen, even when it happened with me. My father's uncle, may Allah Azza wa Jal rest his soul, he was actually, we gathered at my wife's house at the time, and he stood up with his cane. I was like, oh, what's happening here, you know? And he said, you know, and he's like making an announcement, and I just looked around like, nobody told me this was the itinerary. We were just sitting down, we were talking about fantasy football, and then all of a sudden, you know, everybody gets quiet, he stands up and he starts, right? And it's like, okay, this is all right. And then this other guy stands up, her uncle, oldest guy in their family, he stands up, says, yes, we agree. I'm like, man, this is like back in the day. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, I'm glad they said for me yes, and I said yes apparently, and it worked out well. So I was just wondering when the burning fire would come in and we start running around it. But I'll tell you, like I'm telling you, everyone has their culture, and you just go with it. I'll tell you, I never seen that in my life, right? And I've been to a few of those. But that was okay, and everybody said, wow, mashallah, that was the best thing we've ever seen. I was like, so with me too. I didn't know that was going down. And I'm telling you, everybody's got other things, I'm sure, right? Everybody's got a nice story. So anyhow, some of the biggest questions we get is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha bid'ah or not? Let me tell you the general rule, very simply put. If you believe that reciting Surah Al-Fatiha is bringing some barakah to this relationship, this is bid'ah by agreement. Got that? If you're doing it because your culture does it, do it. No big deal. That's it. If we recite Surah Al-Fatiha, that means we're engaged now. No big deal. You understood the difference here? Because if you start tying it to a religious belief, the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us that becomes the problem. Right? But if you said, you know what, it's like when I get in my car or before I open the door and I say Bismillah, did I do some innovation? No, I didn't. Right? I didn't say Bismillah so that I can, the girl who I open up is the woman of my dreams. No. You see, what you're doing is a cultural practice. Right? If you believe that this is incomplete or now this will never work out, I didn't hear him recite the Fatiha. This is the problem. You see the difference? So I don't want you to be so strict in this regard because I know some of my teachers are very strict in this regard where they'll tell you, oh man, don't do it, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I will tell you personally, I don't. There's no big deal about it though, right? And then I get called out on it all the time, by the way. It's like, they'll go like that and it's almost like, I'm like, what are you looking at me for? You know, they're all doing this. It happens every single engagement now, Allahu Akbar, probably in the last, 2-3 years probably, right? And they're all just staring at me. And sometimes I'll just give them a good wink to let them know, I see you looking at me, you're supposed to be looking down, I think, right? Anyhow, the manner in proposing in Sharia is either spoken or implied, it doesn't matter. So, the bride can accept. Okay, here's the other thing. If the girl knows that there are 2 or 3 guys asking for her at the same time, that's okay. That's okay. And she can sit there and say, you know what, I want this guy to come and see if this works out with him. That's allowed. What is not allowed is if one of you guys knows that that they went to propose for a particular girl, then what you do is you're not allowed to go and propose to that same girl. This is not allowed because the Prophet ﷺ specifically told us that a man is not allowed to make a proposal on top of his brother's proposal in marriage. This also goes with business. You understand this? Very important. And that's why one of the biggest mistakes people don't recognize is that the rulings of marriage actually have a lot of flexibility to them. When we're studying the religion, we break the religion up into 2 categories essentially. It's 1 category, but 2 essentially. One is more divine, one is the ibadat, right? Your tahara, your ablution, your prayer, your fasting, your alms tax, your pilgrimage, things like that. And then there is the mu'amala, which is the dealings with one another. And marriage does not fall under ibadat. It actually falls under transactions. It actually falls right in the same realm as business transactions, believe it or not. Because there's so many conditions. There's so many conditions that can happen in a marriage that there's no way that they can all be set there and written down. But we have different rules of thumb, if you will. So if you look here, the Prophet ﷺ, let's see, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So you're also allowed, is a girl allowed to ask a guy in marriage? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting down, and one of the female companions came and asked the Prophet ﷺ for marriage. The Prophet ﷺ remained silent. Like, it's not his style. No, you know? So I'm sure that was awkward, right? But you know what? I give it to her. She's got guts. She's got the Prophet of Allah in front of you. He's not limited to 4. None of the prophets were. So why not? Take a chance. See if it works. Didn't work out. So then the Prophet ﷺ, one of the companions comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, Ya Rasulullah, if you're not interested in marrying her, I'll marry her. So he looks at the girl, he goes, Yani, I know you came to me, but here's plan B. So he goes, you want to marry this guy? She goes, sure. He goes, all right, class, you guys married. Simple business, you know. That's how it went. Today, you want to live in Wayne? Where you want to live? What kind of car you want to drive? How many cars you plan on owning? What's your limit on kids? You know, my diamond ring part of the mahar or not part of the mahar? You know, you gonna cap me on my wedding dress? My last friend told $1,500. I don't know. You watch that show and say yes to the dress? You know, see, it gets complicated. Now, we made it complicated. It's crazy stuff. We're the ones who did this, though. Did you just see that marriage back then? Boom, happily ever after. There was the end with the little, you know, but we don't like that. So anyhow, there is a hadith of Umar ibn Khattab. So yes, a girl can ask a man in marriage. By the way, key point cannot be in khalwa. Khalwa is defined as a male and a female in seclusion. In seclusion. Very, very important. A male and a female in seclusion, right? That's why a lot of the scholars won't consider text messaging as khalwa, because it has to be in person. Some scholars did. But one thing that they all agreed on is you be very, very careful, right? So if you're texting an opposite gender, you 100% make sure it's professional, right? If you're doing MSA work, what I used to do when I used to be the Amir of Durba, what I used to try to make sure is I would create a group so that none of the sisters felt uncomfortable and there was more than one person in that group, right? So that's something very important. Just to make everyone comfortable, and you know, you don't slip up, because you will slip up is the problem, you know, because you're volunteering with this person for months at end, and all it needs to be is the yeah, LOL. Well, what's this? Never said this before. And that's just that one mistake, right? But if there's somebody else in the group, really, it keeps you in check. And I mean it. And that's just for all of your safety. And so a girl can propose to a guy. Can a guy propose to a man on behalf of his daughter? The answer is yes. And it happened with Umar ibn Khattab, radiyallahu anhu. Let me just see how much time we have left, because I like to keep check. Okay. Maghrib is 5:40?
5:44.
5:44. What time should we go to? Just so I know. On average, what do we set up for? 40 minutes, 30 minutes?
I think it's usually an hour.
Usually an hour, so I could keep going?
Yeah, we can go until, let's say,
5:30?
yeah, 5:30.
Is that okay with everybody? That's all right. All right. So, Umar ibn Khattab, after Hafsa, his daughter, became widowed and her husband died, and her former husband died in Medina, he went to Uthman, and you know this story very well. He went to Uthman, he said, what do you think of Hafsa and marriage? Uthman said, give me a few days to think about it. So he came back, he said, you know, it's not the right time for me, my conditions and whatnot. He goes, I'm going to have to unfortunately decline. So then he goes and he meets Abu Bakr, he says, what do you think for my daughter in marriage? Abu Bakr just stays silent, doesn't even respond. What's going on? Like, I know you, Abu Bakr, he's like my best friend, why didn't you even say anything? So he just walks away. He said he was even more angry with Abu Bakr than Uthman. He said, at least Uthman responded to me. He came back and he said, you know, I'm not, it's not a good position for me right now. So anyhow, then later on, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he comes and asks for Hafsa in marriage, and obviously he said yes. And so Abu Bakr went to Umar, he said, perhaps you got angry with me the other day. And he said, yeah, I did actually, I was angry with you. And look at the honesty these guys have with one another, so they don't hold grudges or anything like that. He said, I'll tell you. He said, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned Hafsa to me in secret. He said, and I did not want to expose or let out the secret of the Prophet ﷺ. Had he refused, had he said, no, I'm no longer interested in her, I surely would have accepted her in marriage. So you see, And what is the lesson learned here? That, one day you guys, if Allah gives you life, long life, and the other side of the room, there is nothing wrong or ashamed of you convincing your husband or you guys, you find a guy, a stand-up guy, that you go and you ask him if he's interested in getting married. There's nothing wrong with that. Because you're losing on a great opportunity here. And what's the worst that can happen that we said? This guy comes, hits two knocks on the door, he comes and sits down, didn't work out between them. So what? Move on. Everybody keep going. But you see, this is also from the sunnah that we should try to implement. Is it permissible for you to propose to a woman who is considering a proposal of of a corrupt person, of a fasid? Okay, so some of the scholars said yes, but it seems that the stronger opinion is no. Because why? The Prophet ﷺ, he said no because he's still your Muslim brother. Even though this person is not a good Muslim, and you know that they're getting engaged, you're still not allowed to propose to that girl regardless. Some people said, okay, well, time out. I'm allowed to marry a girl from Ahl al-Kitab. I'm allowed to marry a girl from the Christian background or a Jewish background, as long as she's Assaf, right? She's chaste in the sense that she has a very good reputation. She's not around doing bad things or anything like that, and whatnot. So you know that about her, right? So she's getting engaged to a Christian guy. The Prophet ﷺ said you can't propose to a guy to a girl when you know that your Muslim brother has made that proposal in marriage. So they said, well, he's not Muslim. Can I go and propose to her in marriage? What do you guys think? Huh? Why? Can't just say no.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So, the Prophet ﷺ said, no man is allowed to propose to another girl when he knows that his Muslim brother proposed to her.
Okay.
When he knows his brother proposed to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, this guy is not his brother, because he's your brother in Islam if he was Muslim. Am I allowed to go and propose to that girl to marry me, even though she's engaged to this other dude who's not Muslim?
Do you go back to culture? Do you go back to the culture of the area?
The hint is in the hadith.
So your Muslim brother.
They didn't say Muslim. He said your brother. No, because we don't consider them our brothers. But I will tell you, you're close. In the regard that, and Nawawi rahimahullah, he said no, it's still not allowed, and the majority of scholars agreed with him. He said because your Muslim, your brother, meaning Muslim, will be the most common marriages you know amongst you. He said, but it goes for any kind of proposal like that, in marriage in particular, not necessarily in another way. So if you know that a girl is particularly engaged, that's it, off limits, you get it? Rule of thumb, it's pretty easy. Khalas, she's engaged, let them move on with their life and stop trying to, ruin society, okay? If you actually married a girl who was in her engagement period, is your marriage even valid? Interesting. And the scholars said yes, it is, but you've done a sin. You've done a sin. Okay, let's see. All right. Here are some of the differences, very key differences you should know that distinguish the engagement period from the actual marriage contract.
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say the woman has a proposal, and she proposes to another man,
Yeah.
and he knows she has that proposal. Can he accept her proposal?
She should not be proposing to another man if she's accepted the proposal from the first.
But from the man's perspective, can he accept that second proposal?
Oh, you're saying maybe she just don't care. Can the guy? The answer is no. Because you know that this guy already had gotten engaged with her. Got it?
Yeah.
Made his proposal to her. Okay? Here's some very important points. One, you can actually be physical with a marriage contract. You cannot pre-marriage contract. That means even the handshake, by the way. I know a lot of you guys like, seriously, this is the person I'm marrying, blah, blah. Seriously, then just write your get down. Be done with it. Shake away. It's very simple, right? So, no, you cannot be. Seclusion is not allowed unless you have your marriage contract. Sexual intimacy. Now you might even say, whoa, pump the brakes. We didn't get the wedding yet. Here's something very interesting, obviously not recommended, don't sit there sneaking around doing it, get in a lot of trouble. If there was some sexual intimacy that happened after a marriage contract, that is not haram. I want to make that clear. But that is also why, to close any doors of a fitna, both are considered divorced if a marriage contract happens, right? You have to be very clear about that, right? And so for you girls, to protect your own reputation, I want to make sure you understand this following distinction. This is very important, so pay attention. If you got engaged, and then you did your marriage contract, okay? The wedding, let's say you decided was 3 or 6 months from now. If there was ever a moment, from the moment you did your marriage contract to the moment that you get your wedding night, right, and the consummation that's supposed to happen there, because that's what's agreed upon between the families, understood implicitly. If there was ever a moment in that period where the action itself could have taken place, we consider both of them not virgins. So, why is this important? Let's play this through over a 6-month period. Month 1, proposal, everything's going great. Month 3, marriage contract. Month 6 is supposed to be the wedding. Month 3, you start going out to the movies. We don't know where you're going. You say you're going to the movies. Take her out, drive in, you're back by 9. Then, right? Then what happens? Month 5, it doesn't work out. We don't know. Just didn't work out. Divorced. Both are considered divorced. We actually cannot say, we can't speak on her or his behalf that they're both virgins. You remove them.
Oh.
But if they never were alone in that period, that action could have happened. Let's say if they have the marriage contract, but they still brought a little brother along, or they brought a sister or a cousin, or, yeah, I'm just saying, or they went to, literally, they took a walk to the restaurant down the street, or whatever that may be, any of that, then that's fine. But if you guys put yourselves in that situation, and it didn't work out after that, that title for you is removed, okay? Is anybody confused about that? No? It's pretty clear, right? Good. All right. Also, once the marriage is consummated, so once the wedding night and everything after that, now the man is financially responsible for her. Okay. An engagement could be in private, but a marriage is not allowed to be private. It must be public. It must be well known. All right, and that's the purpose of the witnesses. Women can have multiple proposals. We mentioned that there's no waiting period. Okay, and there's no waiting period if there is a removal from the actual engagement, right? And inheritance established only through the marriage only, the contract, right? And then also the in-laws become mahram forever, right? At the marriage contract, whether it's consummated or not, both in-laws up the stream become forbidden in marriage the other way. That means that once the marriage contract happens, she's allowed to shake the hand of her father-in-law. She can even shake the hand of her husband's grandfather, because it goes all the way up, right? That ruling goes all the way up. Same way the other way. He can send him to his mother-in-law and her mother, going all the way up there. All right, just so we're on the same page. Okay? Looking at the prospective spouse, and I think we have time to cover this part. Looking at the prospective spouse, are you allowed to look at them? The answer is yes. Allah mentioned that indirectly in the Quran, and also the Prophet ﷺ specifically said, if one of you proposes to a woman and he can see what would encourage him to marry her, then he should do so. That's in Abu Dawood. So they said, well, is it recommended to look at the prospective spouse? And the majority said, absolutely, it's permissible. You can see them. They said, well, if you're going to look, then you have to be very professional in what you're going to be trying to see. You shouldn't be looking at them without their clothes. You shouldn't be, a man, you should not be requesting to see her without her hijab. You understood that point? I know this is confusing for some people, because some people say, oh, I get one look. I could get one look. And the answer is yes and no. Why am I saying yes and no? Yes, you could if, for example, you were able to see without making that request. I'm not trying to encourage, what was that guy, Peeping Pete or Tom or whoever that guy was? I don't think you guys were on the news at that time. You don't know what I'm talking about? He would go into the bathroom, hold a little freak. And then, I'm serious, there's some sick people out there. But, okay, so you should be done with natural appearances. They said, for example, if you're going to do it, oh sisters, okay, number one, you're exposing yourself to some request, which you don't have to. You don't have to commit to that request. However, if you did, you should not be wearing all sorts of makeup. You shouldn't be dyeing your hair. You shouldn't be wearing color contact lenses and all this other stuff. Because, you know, if in this regard, they just want to see the natural thing, right? Natural you. You don't have to sit there. But afterwards, if you wanted to dress up a little bit after you guys. By the way, once Get Miktab happens between you and him, pretty much 99% is allowed, right? You should not be taking, when you guys meet with one another, you shouldn't be doing it in a private place. You and your wali should definitely know about it, 100%. We all recommend that it happens at your home, or somebody comes along with you, all right? I just want to make sure that I'm covering things like that. So they said, well, what if, for example, how much is allowed if they did see and you did need to make that decision? If the guy is insisting, well, no, I want to know who I'm marrying. I really need to see. They said the things that show naturally. So let's say she was at home and she was doing homework or doing whatever things around the house. They said naturally. So if her arm went up, you could see the arm. Around here is fine, the neck area, and her feet and her shin. That's pretty much it. Now there might be something on the internet that you may have read that I want to clarify. That in Islam, we are allowed to see our prospective bride naked, right? And this is a shame because a lot of times people misunderstand this. And the answer to this is 100% no. They may have even quoted a fatwa from Imam Ahmad, and I think, let me see, yeah, and from Ibn Hazm, that the answer is they can. Here's where the misconception is, because when Jabir asked the Prophet ﷺ that he came in advice, he said, I'm going to get married to this girl, he said, did you see her? He asked Jabir, did you see her? He said, no, I didn't. He said, go and see her. And if you still like her, like what you see, then continue with the marriage. Like you should see the person you're going to marry. So what he did, he went to see her in her house. He passed by. He knows the area she lives in, and he passed by. He's seen her. The issue is back then, you have to understand the difference here. The way that the showers and the outhouses were designed back then is not like today. So back then, if you wanted to take a shower, you literally walked maybe like, I don't know, 100 or 200 feet away from your house, right, towards the back area, kind of secluded area, right? And you were kind of covered in this around you, and you would shower up, and then you'd come back home in that area. Or you would do it in your house. But the doors that they had back then weren't always these metal doors that you imagine in prehistoric times, like the old ways. There was just this little rug, right? And if a little wind came, you actually saw inside the house. You saw everyone inside the house. So some of them had doors, some of them didn't. But if while you were passing by and she was undressing or something like that, and you happened to see it, they were asked, is that person sinning because of what they seen? And they said no. Did you get the difference here? That is, they were passing by. That's the difference. And they accidentally seen that. So all of you can clarify, because you might get posed with this question, and the more knowledgeable you are, the more that, alhamdulillah, we clarify these misconceptions, that the answer is absolutely no. But if you must, and you need to know who this person you're marrying is, then the answer is yes. Because Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he went to propose to Kulthum's daughter, and before he went through with it 100%, he actually came by and he lifted her skirt a little bit, out of respect and not permission too. He lifted and he just looked at her feet and her legs, right? Hope she got a pedicure that day, but it looked like she did, so everything went well. All right, alhamdulillah. So, is her permission required? Is her permission required? And the majority said you can look without her permission. You can look, but obviously you're just doing it. That's if you were just passing by. But nobody's passing by today. Everybody has their walls pretty locked up, right? Curtains, blindfolds, whatever they got. So today, if you did want to make that request, you would have to request that across from her. Say, listen, I was just curious. Do you have a photo or something of you without hijab? I just wanted to know, you know, pretty much like that. Because the guy actually, I don't know, I shouldn't bring that up, that's me. He actually divorced his wife for false advertising the day after their marriage. I don't know if you saw it, it was on the news. But he actually sued her and he won it. So he went to court and he said, this is who I married, this is who I was engaged to all the time. He showed the picture in court and he said, and this is who she was the day after the marriage. He goes, I don't know. And I swear by Allah, man, that was night and day. And it was all over the news. There was a guy in Morocco and the court ruled in his favor that she deceived him. And he didn't have to pay for certain things. It was just not looking good. And it just shows you, you know, a lot of makeup, man. Just, you know what's going on. It could change people. Okay. We mentioned that. Okay, yeah, so this is the most important part. And then what we'll start talking, okay. And in the engagement itself, some people do rings. And then we'll open the floor to see if anybody has any questions. So, then some people do engagement rings, right? They get their name engraved, and then they put this one on, and move on. So, here's the one thing I'll tell you, rule number 1. Engagement rings are absolutely allowed. There's nothing wrong with them. On the condition, one condition. You do not believe that this engagement ring is strengthening your bond, right? In the eyes of God, right? Or is locking you in. Because a lot of this is a Christian belief, right? If you do not believe that, then it's absolutely allowed. Absolutely allowed. Because actually, even the Prophet ﷺ told one of the companions, give her dowry even if it's an iron ring. Even if it's an iron ring. To show that you're serious about the marriage. To show that you're serious about the marriage. Gift giving during the engagement period, absolutely allowed. By the way, keep in mind, I didn't know this, everybody gets on me till this day, that when you're engaged, I know we do these ceremonies, there's the engagement ceremony, the just ceremony everything up, but here's the thing, and may Allah forgive us all, you're not allowed to put that ring on your hand. I know there's a little technicality, you're like, what's the big deal, right? I could just make sure I don't touch it, you know, but it's just, believe me, because you guys are engineering students, I'm telling you, I know what your next question is going to be. I could hold something and make sure I'm wearing a glove, and Prince Harry type it doing it, and, look, if you very simply put, just drop the ring, or put this on, I'll put mine on, do it the old school style. That's not so romantic, you can do it on the knee, not bad knee. All right, let's see. All right, I just want to make sure what we're going to cover next week, because next week we're just going to, I just want to make sure we're going to, I want to make sure we have enough time. Oh, next week, don't forget, I'm not here, right? I'm in Atlanta, but let me see. Okay. So I'm not going to go over, just so you're all aware, because this would bore you all to death, and this is not a fiqh class at the end of the day. I want you guys all really prepared to take on that responsibility. I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to sit there and go into all the details of the marriage contract. I will mention the dowry. That I'm going to mention is pretty important, inshallah. We're going to mention, let me just make sure. Oh, okay. There's another thing that I am going to mention. The next time, and somebody can write this down and remind me, what we're covering next week is actually the top reasons that lead to a divorce or a marriage separation. Because now you've entered this, you want it to succeed. That's the goal, right? So knowing these preventative things will actually get you prepared for them. Will actually get you very prepared for them. Inshallah. Mm-hmm. There is a rated R lecture, but it would not be recorded. It's up to you guys if you want to go over it or not, but I just think that nobody's ever taught it to you guys, and that's the reason that I would teach it to you guys, and I think you're all adults enough not to, to take it serious, to understand things that are allowed, not allowed, and whatnot. So we could probably go over that as well. We'll mention the rulings on birth control, abortion, newborns, what to do with the newborn child, things like that. But anyhow, up to till now. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
So when you mentioned the in-laws,
Yeah.
after getting married, you said the in-laws are automatically mahram.
Once to get the big tab.
Once
Once the marriage contract is
Oh.
done.
So this is not, because you were talking specifically of like mother-in-law, father-in-law, and nothing there.
Yeah.
That doesn't include their brother or sister-in-law.
No, your brother, my brothers will never be mahram to my wife. So, this is an excellent point. And we're gonna cover in-laws. A lot of girls take their hijab off in front of their brother-in-laws. This is absolutely haram. It's not allowed. Because they're not mahram to, right? If this guy died, his brother can marry her. It'd be awkward, but, hey, she wanted to stay in the family. It really would be. Yeah.
So a few years ago, one of my teachers mentioned a type of marriage that I've never heard of before. He called it zawaj as-sayf.
We're gonna mention.
Oh, what's that?
We're gonna cover that,
Big?
inshallah. Yeah, there's a lot of things. We're gonna cover zawaj al-mit'a, this is the temporary one, things like that. We're gonna cover all the different types of marriages, right? Zawaj al-misyar. There's a lot. There's a lot of interesting marriages out there, but we're gonna cover them. We're gonna cover them, inshallah. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure before I take another question to see if I'm missing anything. We're also going to cover the marriage contract. I mean the in-laws, how to deal with that in a nice way, right? Trying to see this. Okay. Oh yeah, we're going to cover domestic violence. We're going to cover actual physical violence and that. We're going to definitely cover that. Everybody needs to know that. Very important. General rule, just so prepares you on, you already know it's not allowed, but it'll clarify some of the misconceptions that people have about it. All right? Did I mention? Okay, yeah. So I think for the most part, we should be good in that regard. Okay, we are going to cover the dowry. Oh yeah, sorry. We are going to cover too the wedding. Certain things that are allowed. There's some things that happen at weddings, man. And we're going to talk about that, the wedding night. All right, we're going to mention all that. The one that we will do, the essential rated R one, will be the last one on marriage. So we will do that next time. Okay, yeah.
So we talked about like texting and whatnot, how to keep or to keep it professional, right? But like
This is with a potential spouse you're engaged with, or this now, for example?
that's what I'm about to ask.
Oh.
Like a potential spot like that you're engaged with. You're still not allowed to like text them, right? Until like after the.
So the answer is you're allowed to text them. You're allowed to. How are you going to get to know them? You can text them, yeah. But obviously you're not sending the naked pictures of yourself, right? Nobody wants to see that anyway. So, being honest with you. So don't do that, right? That's a big no-no. But yeah, you can text them. Good morning. Wake up for Fajr. See you later. What more do you want? Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if you covered this. After you're engaged, does there have, do you need to have a third person every?
Yeah. If you are trying to meet with them in a secluded area, the answer is yes. If you're trying to meet with them in a non-secluded area, in a public area, this is pre-marriage contract, right? You're asking? So you're asking about the engagement time, pre-marriage contract. The answer is the Prophet ﷺ said you're not allowed to meet with a lady unless or a girl got hit by my mom once when I was a kid because I called my sister a lady. Apparently there's a difference. They're supposed to call them girls until they get married. Didn't know that. So anyhow, so yes, he said except without her wali. Except without her wali. So unless there is a really, really important matter that needs to happen and her father can't be there, or her brother, and her brother who's of age. What do I mean that? Because I've seen a couple take this 3 or 5 years old kid, and she goes, "Look, I got my little brother with me right here." What? This is for your protection here. You don't bring the 6-year-old. So a person of age and a person who, with wisdom, if they can't be there, a mahram with you, then what happens is then you let him know right? He has to be okay with it, and you make sure 100% it's a public area. So what did some people do to go around the bush here? Because believe me, there's always we went in the public area. They went to the park that no one knows about, that nobody's seen, that we didn't even, that we just determined it was a park. It's not even on Google Maps as a park. And they said, well, it's a public area. You know, that's insane. That's crazy. That's not good. So what we're talking about here, maybe like you know, Central Park, like that. Branchbrook Park don't count. There's nobody goes there. There's joggers in the morning, and that's it. And then the little blossom things, and then nobody visits that. All right, so that doesn't count. So public thing, accepting that you get permission from the dad. He says, okay, you got an hour, or whatever he says. But again, you really should always have my help with you.
Even texting.
No, so texting is a little different, right? So texting, it's not like, you know, is that okay? No. So you can text, that's okay, as long as your father knows. That's very important. So he knows about it, and you know, you gotta be very smart. You gotta be very smart. I know the attachment is very crazy, because here's what you guys have to understand. There's a difference between the infatuation period and the actual marriage period. Yeah, there's a big difference. Infatuation, you say, you'll do anything. You really do anything. So that's that part. You gotta be very smart on what you say, okay, and what you text before that gets big that period. Because may Allah protect us all, if it doesn't work out, I've seen, one time it happened, I had to get involved in, may Allah remove anybody from this kind of thing, is that I won't say whether it was the girl or the guy, they started holding it and trying to blackmail that person. Yeah, and I'm telling you, it's not great, because, you know, when somebody becomes infatuated with the other person, and it's not, you know, bi-directional, it's one way, and then it doesn't work out, you know, the mind is an interesting thing. It doesn't go to many good places when it's not, you know, following, like being guided by Allah. So what happens is they started using that as blackmail. I promise you, if you get engaged to that individual, I'm going to post this on Facebook or something like that. Like, this is insane. This is your Muslim brother. This is your Muslim sister at the end of the day. You know, didn't work out, you move on. That's it. And I don't want to freak any of you out, because this is, you guys hear a story like this and that's it. You set it in stone. Oh, no. I know what's happening now. But just, well, I'm saying be smart. Be careful. That's all. Say nice things. It's all right. All right? Any other questions? Don't ask anyone. That's my cousin. Any other questions?